All right, and we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It is Thursday. It is our family ministry edition of Table Talk, where we are continuing through and getting close to the end of this great little book here, the Jesus Storybook Bible. We've been going through this book for quite a few weeks now, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit. I've even learned some stuff that I didn't know before. So this is a great book. This is a great book for children. This is also a great book for parents and for families. And so I hope you've been enjoying it as well. We are going to get started here momentarily. As always, this is being recorded live. If you are here watching live, welcome. Glad to have you here. It will also be recorded and available later on Facebook. So if you aren't able to catch it live, it will be available for you to watch or rewatch at your convenience afterwards on Facebook. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Let's get zoomed in on the book here. Learning all about the life of Jesus, and we're beginning with a chapter called Filled Full. There were once 5,000 tired and hungry and probably very grumpy people sitting on a hillside wanting their dinner. They'd come to hear Jesus that day. They came before breakfast, stayed all morning, all afternoon, and way past dinner. No one had meant to be out there that long, but that's how it was listening to Jesus, as if time didn't exist. People could just listen to Jesus for hours. And on this particular day, that's exactly what they did. But they hadn't brought enough food. They couldn't just go and buy themselves a burger and fries to go because, of course, they were in the middle of nowhere, with no shops or restaurants. Besides, that kind of food hadn't been invented yet. What would they do? Jesus' friends had an idea. Let's send everyone home for dinner. They don't need to go, Jesus said. You can give them something to eat. Did Jesus want them to travel all the way to town and buy food for everyone? Jesus' friends panicked. We don't have enough money. What food do you have? Jesus asked. Go and see. Now there was a little boy in the crowd. He had brought a lunch that his mother had made for him that morning. He looked at his 5 loaves and 2 fish. It wasn't much. Not nearly enough for 5,000, but it was all he had. I have some, he said. Jesus' friends laughed when they saw his little lunch. That's not nearly enough, they said. But they were wrong. Jesus knew it didn't matter how much the little boy had. God would make it enough. More than enough. Jesus said, "Bring me what you have." And so the little boy gave Jesus his lunch. Jesus winked at the little boy and whispered in his ear, "Watch." How in the world will Jesus feed everyone with just that? Jesus' friends said, because they thought it was impossible. But Jesus knew the one who made all the fish in the oceans. And Jesus knew the one who in the very beginning had made everything out of nothing at all. How hard would something like this be for someone like that? Jesus took the little boy's lunch, looked up to heaven, and thanked his Father. Then Jesus gave the little lunch back to his friends. And as Jesus' friends started to hand out the food, do you know what? It It was the strangest thing. No matter how much they broke off, there was always more, and more, and more. Enough for 5,000. Everyone ate as much as they wanted. Second helpings, third helpings, even fourths, until they were full, and still there were leftovers. Well, Jesus did many miracles like this. Things people thought couldn't happen, that weren't natural. But it was the most natural thing in all the world. It's what God had been doing from the very beginning, of course. Taking the nothing and making it everything. Taking the emptiness and filling it up. Taking the darkness and making it light. Brings us to our second chapter for the day. This one is called Treasure Hunt. One day, Jesus was telling people about God's kingdom. God's kingdom is wherever God is king, Jesus told them. It's wherever God is in charge. It's where he fills your heart up with his forever happiness, and you stop running away from him and you love him. But sometimes people couldn't understand things very well, so Jesus helped them by telling them stories called parables. And Jesus said God's kingdom is like a hidden treasure. And then he told them this story. Once upon a time, there was a man who was working in a field, digging. So there he is digging. But what he doesn't know is that in that field, there is buried treasure. So dig, 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 clink, clank, clonk. Uh-oh. His shovel bumps into something hard. Hello, what's this? He picks it up, dusts it off. It's a chest. It's rusted and locked, but creak. He pries it open. What he sees inside takes his breath away. Beautiful, glittering, gleaming, twinkling, sparkling, precious jewels. It's a treasure chest. He wants that treasure. He needs to get that treasure. He must have that treasure somehow. Even if he has to sell everything he has so that he can pay for it. He quickly buries the treasure again, runs home, and sells everything he has. He takes the money from the sale and goes and buys that field. Now he owns the field and the treasure that is buried in it. He runs back and digs up the treasure again. Jesus said, coming home to God is as wonderful as finding a treasure. You might have to dig before you find it. You might have to look before you see it. You might even have to give up everything you have to get it. But being where God is, being in his kingdom, that's more important than anything else in all the world. It's worth anything you have to give up, Jesus told them, because God is the real treasure. God had a treasure too, of course, a treasure that was lost long, long ago. What was God's treasure? His most important thing? The thing God loved best in all the world? God's treasure was his children. It was why Jesus had come into the world, to find God's treasure and pay the price to win them back. And Jesus would do it, even if it cost him everything he had. That brings us to chapter 3 for today. This one is called The Friend of Little Children. Jesus' friends were arguing who was the most important helper in God's kingdom. They wanted to know. I am, James said. No, you're not, said Peter. I am. "Nonsense," Matthew said. "I'm the cleverest." "No, you're not." "Yes, I am." "Yes." "No, am too." This silliness went on like that for some time. You see, Jesus' friends had started thinking they had to do something to make themselves special to Jesus. That if they were the cleverest or the nicest or something, Jesus would like them best. But they had forgotten something. Something God had been teaching his people all through the years. That no matter how clever you are, or how good you are, or how rich you are, or how nice you are, or how important you are, none of it makes any difference. Because God's love is a gift. And, as anyone will tell you, the whole thing about a gift is it's free. All you have to do is reach out your hands and take it. So while Jesus' friends were arguing, some people who knew all about getting gifts, in fact, you might say they were gift experts, had come to see Jesus. Who were they? They were little children. Jesus' helpers tried to send them away. "Jesus doesn't have time for you," they said. "He's too tired." They were wrong. Jesus always had time for children. "Don't ever send them away," Jesus said. "Bring the little ones to me." Now, if you had been there, what do you think? Would you have had to line up quietly to see Jesus? Do you think Jesus would have asked you how good you'd been before he'd give you a hug? Would you have to have been on your best behavior and get dressed up and not speak until you're spoken to? Or would you have done just what these children did? Run straight up to Jesus and let him pick you up in his arms and swing you and kiss you and hug you and then sit you on his lap and listen to your stories and your chats? You see, children loved Jesus. They knew they didn't need to do anything special for Jesus to love them. All they needed to do was run into his arms. So that's just what they did. Well, after all the laughing and games, Jesus turned to his helpers and said, "No matter how big you grow, never grow up so much that you lose your child's heart, full of trust in God. Be like these children. They are the most important in my kingdom." We are going to do one more for this afternoon. This final one is called "The Man Who Didn't Have Any Friends." None. There was once a man who didn't have any friends at all. Do you have any friends? Well, of course you do, but not Zacchaeus. Poor Zacchaeus didn't have any friends. You're probably wondering why. Was it because he was so short? It's not a reason to not like someone. Was it because he had a name that was hard to say? Well, neither is that. Even though he was short and he did have a funny name, that wasn't it. No, people didn't like Zacchaeus because he stole their money. Zacchaeus collected taxes. Taxes were what people had to pay to the king. But Zacchaeus took more than he was supposed to and kept the extra money for himself and made himself rich. Everyone knew what he was up to, and it made them cross and grumpy. They didn't like Zacchaeus one bit. So they made sure he knew it by doing things like avoiding him and walking on the opposite side of the street and pretending not to see him and whispering things like, "There's that nobody who thinks he's somebody," loud enough that he could hear. Anyway, one day, a huge crowd gathered by the road. Jesus was coming to their town, and everyone wanted to see him. Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus too, but everyone was too tall. He tried jumping up and down, but that didn't work. He couldn't see a thing. Luckily, Zacchaeus had a good idea. "I'll climb that sycamore tree," he said, and so he did. He was surprisingly good at climbing trees for a man who was so unusually short that he had to take a flying leap just to get into his chair in the morning. From that tree, Zacchaeus had a perfect view all the way down to the road. Another minute, and suddenly Jesus was at the tree. He stopped and looked up. Zacchaeus saw Jesus, and Jesus saw Zacchaeus. "Zacchaeus," Jesus said, "I'd like to come over to your house." Zacchaeus almost fell out of the tree. Come over to his house? No one ever wanted to come anywhere near his house, let alone inside it. The people saw this, and needless to say, it made them even crosser and grumpier than usual. They mumbled and murmured and muttered. "Why is Jesus being kind to that big sinner? Doesn't Jesus know about him?" Zacchaeus scrambled down and took Jesus to his house. He was in a big hurry because he didn't want Jesus to change his mind. Perhaps Jesus hadn't heard about him. Perhaps Jesus didn't know about how he had been stealing, and how no one liked him, and how he didn't have any friends. But Jesus knew. He knew all about Zacchaeus and the stealing and everything, and he still loved him. Zacchaeus was ashamed. "Lord," he said, turning pale, "what I've done is wrong, but now I want to do the right thing. I will give the money back to everyone, 4 times what I stole." And that's just what he did. Jesus smiled. "My friend," he said, "today God has rescued you." Jesus loved Zacchaeus when no one else did. He was Zacchaeus' friend even when no one else was, because Jesus was showing people what God's love was like. His wonderful, never stopping, never giving up, unbreakable, always and forever love. And that is where we are going to leave off for this week. Thanks for joining us once again for this Thursday edition of Table Talk, reading through the Big Picture, not the Big Picture Story Bible, the Jesus Storybook Bible. I do still have copies of this book available if you do happen to be interested in having one for your family. Tune in tomorrow again at 3:30 for our typical roundtable discussion for the Friday Table Talk. And don't forget, tonight is the last night to sign up for Sunday service. To register, if you have not registered already, that registration will close tomorrow morning, Friday morning at 9 a.m. We hope to see many of you tomorrow, many more of you even on Sunday. Until then, I hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye now.